So this podcast title is The Art and Science of Weightlifting. Danny's with me today, and we're going to be covering the basics of weightlifting, the different types of weightlifting. We're also going to be talking about the benefits and myths, and then we're going to be wrapping up with the differences between mechanics, form, and technique. Danny, welcome.
Welcome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Ready to rock and roll?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Let's get right into it. So before we jump in, I think you have a memorable weightlifting story. Let's share that real quick just to set the stage.
I mean, I have tons of memorable weightlifting memories, but I will, I've done a lot of weightlifting over my years competitively. But the one thing I will say is, I think my first year of CrossFit, I met a guy who was a CrossFit coach at the gym, right? And he recruited me to be a powerlifter, right? And he had won, we get in there, we start weightlifting or whatever. He actually won the Arnold Strongman in the 80s.
Okay.
He won I think in 88 or 89, he's podiumed and they won gold at Arnold. So he's like legit, right? And he pulls me to the side and he's like, you're going to powerlift. I go, I don't know. And he goes, no, I know. You're going to powerlift. Come here. And I was like, all right, man. And so, we worked together for about 4 months in total, right, of doing it. And I went from and if you know me, this will make you laugh, but my max 1 rep deadlift when I started was 200 pounds. And wow. I mean, I almost blew my back out doing it. I went from 200 pounds to 365 in about a 4-month span, right, of just training it and doing it. And I weighed when I first started with him, I weighed about 185 pounds, maybe 189 pounds. And when I finished the 4 months, I was weighing around 220, 225. So I grew immensely, and I learned so much from just a cycle of that 4-month period where we just focused on powerlifting, right? We deadlifted, we pressed, and we squatted, and that's all we did for about 4 months. And it really changed my whole trajectory of where I was headed in the CrossFit space.
Wow, that's awesome. I think you and I both have similar stories because you and I both started off more of a body weight or an endurance person. And that's kind of how I started off with too. I was only 150 pounds when I first started CrossFit. In high school, my 1 rep max deadlift was 225 and same thing. It almost broke me in half.
Yeah.
And then when I first started CrossFit, my biggest weakness overall was definitely any kind of lifting whatsoever. Even wall balls were hard for me when I first started CrossFit because my legs were just not
not there. Yeah.
And then I realized when we started implementing more weightlifting and I started getting on more dedicated training cycles that my CrossFit improved significantly because I had the strength and the muscle endurance to handle some of these other movements that I had to do, especially with the intensity we were doing it at.
Yeah. I think one of the big things was I always wanted to RX workouts when I first started CrossFit. Right. It was a big deal to RX workouts, but I could never do RX weights on a good path, right? Mm-hmm. And I needed someone to kind of pull me to the side and be like, listen, you should focus on these 3 principles before you jump into what you're trying to do. Oh, yeah. And it actually paid off. It paid major dividends when I actually listened to the whole thing, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how a little bit of coaching in something advanced like this can go such a long way. And I remember when I first started actually having a coach and started getting coached on weightlifting and doing it the right way at the right time with the appropriate weights and with the proper progressions, that, like I said earlier, I got significantly better because there was a time when I had to break up Fran on the first 21 thrusters. If you don't know what Fran is, it's 21, 15, 9 thrusters at 95 pounds and pull-ups. And 95 pounds for me, I had to do 7. And then I was like, I can't lift it anymore.
Yeah, I'm physically done.
So, all right, perfect. Let's move on to the basics of weightlifting, our first section here out of 3. So let's talk about the 3 different types of lifting. So we have Olympic lifting, powerlifting, and bodybuilding. So Danny, why don't we start with Olympic lifting?
Yeah, I mean, Olympic lifting is the most complex of the 3, so it's a good place to start. It's the application of really force and power with movement, if you think about it, right? It's the snatch, the clean, and the jerk. Mm-hmm. So it's 3 separate movements, right? That's what makes it up. The reason we call it Olympic weightlifting, right, is it's the 2. They put the clean and jerk together, so it's the 2 lifts you'll see in the Olympics for the major players of the world to go out and do.
Yep.
And the reason I would think these 2 are the best, right, from a personal bias, but I mean, nothing's more awesome than taking your body weight and throwing it over your head,
Yeah.
catching it. I mean, who doesn't love to do that, right?
Yeah, with speed.
Yeah, but that's really what it is. It's taking, it's adding, force and power with speed over your head on top of it. So, I mean, the technique, the flow, the look of it's just so dynamic. It's so it's like an art form in terms of the way it's done correctly. And if it's not done correctly, right away too. So it's like, it's really just an art, the way it looks at it.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing I like about Olympic weightlifting is that you train so many different components all at once, and it's a full body all at once, and it's a fast muscle contraction all at once. You have to use your entire body very quickly, and it requires agility, speed, coordination, strength, power, and which gives it a huge bang for its buck with just 3 separate lifts.
I mean, going back to some of the previous episodes we've had already, if you can save time and still gain muscle and strength and power, why wouldn't you do it? Right? Also, too, it adds an element of coordination, I think, that you need as you get older, right? Oh, yeah. So I think as we get older, coordination and mobility kind of go away, and it's not something we really think about when you're younger. It's something you're like, yeah, whatever, I can run and catch a ball.
Yeah.
As you get older, you're like, you have a hard time tracking certain aspects, and your mobility falls off. So I feel like doing these is great. I think everyone should do it at some capacity throughout their life. Now, are you going to go to the Olympics and snatch 300 pounds? No. Right? And we don't want you to, right? We just want you to we want you to get the benefits that same person is getting at the level you're at.
Yeah, exactly. And especially as you age, the less you do those fast twitch muscle contractions and those, was it type 1 muscle fibers?
Type 1.
Those type 1
type
muscle
1 speed, type 1, type 2.
Don't get as much work as they do when you're younger. Because you're not, in athletics, you're not running and jumping like you were as a kid. So
you lose those more as you get older, as you age, I should say. Yeah.
Perfect. All right, let's move on to powerlifting. Number 2, what we were talking about. Yeah. So what tell us about powerlifting.
Powerlifting. Okay. I can go lots of different ways here with powerlifting, but powerlifting essentially is 3. It's it's the deadlift, it's the squat, the back squat, right? And it's the bench press. Okay. It's easily one of the most overrated pieces of lifting ever out there, because everyone thinks they're an expert at it because you have done these forms over your lifetime. And it's also the most underrated used tool because no one really knows how to do most of these movements correctly. So I love powerlifting. I mean, I competed in powerlifting for a while. It was a passion of mine for a good amount of my life. But in the day, I mean, it's essentially the best thing for you because it puts overall mass and strength on your body.
Yes.
It doesn't have as much power, or how much speed, I should say, as the Olympic lifts do. So it's a little bit safer in terms of learning and having bad technique or bad form. It's a little bit more forgiving in that sense. Whereas Olympic lifts, it's an art form. You got to have the correct term, the correct lifting technique and form. And when you miss something, right away, and you're limited by those pieces, right?
Yeah.
Where I can just be just a brute athlete or just a brute strength person, do a bad deadlift and still get hundreds of pounds off the ground. It might cost me later on, but I can still do that. You know?
Yeah. So essentially it's just, I mean, the lifts are more simple. The muscle contractions are slower. And the range of motion is different.
Yeah.
And it's great just for building overall strength, but not overall ballistic speed.
I mean, someone once told me if you think about the way the human body is made to move, the powerlifting just makes that the squat pattern, the hinge pattern, the press pattern are the 3 most common patterns used in a human body, right? So the human body's made to do these things. Now it's just strengthening those ligaments, muscles, and tendons to a period that we need it at. So using a different type of muscle range versus the Olympic power stuff.
Yeah. And definitely lifts that Olympic weightlifters still train with. It's just not their specialty. And it's also something that we definitely need to still do as we, doesn't matter how old you are, that squat, deadlift, and bench are things that we should always be doing.
You know what the Olympic lift is called? Powerlifters, right?
What?
Accessories.
Yeah. All right. Ready to move on to bodybuilding?
Let's do it.
Yeah. All right. So bodybuilding is something that most people know of when they think of the gym. So we're talking machines, dumbbells, still bench, still squat, still deadlift, but we're going for more aesthetics, correct?
Yeah. So bodybuilding, let's just be honest, right? Bodybuilding's the what is that? trolling of the Olympic world, right? Mm-hmm. It's the show that you go out there and look at. It's really, bodybuilding is, if you break it down, it can be any sort of form of lifting, right? It's more of like isolation lifts. It's more of eccentric and contraction lifts, right? And it's like there's a million ways to do this, right? But this one is the most like hilarious one to me too, because a lot of people will spend their time doing this bodybuilding form or style, mm-hmm. and they'll ignore the power or the Olympic style, right? Because they think that's how you get to that level. Mm-hmm. So really, like a lot of the bodybuilders that you see on TV were once powerlifters, right? Arnold Schwarzenegger won hundreds of medals in lifting, Olympic style and powerlifting style before he ever was a bodybuilder.
Yeah, that's true. That's something I didn't know until I watched the documentary, was that he was a powerlifter and he'd also did some Olympic weightlifting. Well,
going back to my story, the guy who won the Arnold, right? He won, I met him. He was my coach for a long time. We're still really good friends. He's actually competing now in the 50 division. He was a world-class weightlifter. Like when I met him, he's 41 at the time when I met him.
Right.
He was benching 410 for reps.
Wow.
Imagine walking in, you meet this guy, he's got gray hair, he's an old like looking dog, right? He just gets under the bench and he starts benching 410 for reps, and he's like, "Here, this is my warm-up, this is where we're gonna start." And you're like, good Lord. And then he turns around and does muscle ups right behind you. Yeah. You're like, this guy is in shape.
This guy is in really good shape.
But that's what, his philosophy was like, you need a base to build off before you go to these things. So the bodybuilding style is great because it has, like, again, it's using isolation, which is not something you do normally on the other two previous ones, right? Mm-hmm. It's using a lot more contraction or eccentric movements as well. So it's like it's lowering the range of motion necessarily to keep tension under that muscle to help it like grow or to stay puffed up, right? Like that's and people love that because you feel that right away. Mm-hmm. Whereas like, powerlifting is going to get a baseline strength for you, right? It's going to strengthen ligaments, joints, all those things. Mm-hmm. Olympic lifting is going to help coordination and speed, which you need, but you need a balance of all of these things to be healthy essentially.
Oh,
right?
100%. Yeah, no, that's a great point, Danny. Like in terms of, people are probably going to ask, like, which one should I do? And I'm like, all of them. All of them. Yeah, a great answer, because, they all complement each other and they all fill in the gaps in different ways, because there's really no one way to do lifting. And the best way to get better in terms of muscle mass and having all the speed, agility, coordination, strength, and muscle mass is to do all three.
Well, let's start here with this next piece, right? A lot of people are going to pick what they like, right? A lot of people just like to power lift. A lot of people just like to do Olympic lifting. A lot of people just like to do a bodybuild style circuit of lifting as well, right? Mm. First off, if you're doing one of those things, great. You're doing amazing. You're in the top 10% because you're doing weight and resistance training, which you need to be healthy, right? Yes. So congratulations to you. Here's the downside. If you only do one style, you are going to be so freaking bored, right?
It is boring.
It is so boring because what are you doing all the time? You're just doing lifting, you're doing sets or segments, right? There's really no variance to it. The first rule of weight training, or like first rule of programming, I should say, is you need specificity. You need specificity.
It's okay.
Yeah, specificity, right? You need to be you need to variable your training out. Like it can't just be one style. Because it needs to have, you need to be able to deadlift. If you think about deadlifting, let's just take like deadlifting, from picking up something off the floor and bringing it up. There are 3 real styles of deadlifting. There's conventional, which means your feet are on your hips. There's sumo, which means your feet are outside your shoulders. And there's the RDL, right? The Romanian deadlift, which means it's more of a straight-legged style. Mm-hmm. You should have all 3 of those incorporated into your training program at least one time a week at different variable volumes. So not just a 1 rep. You're not 1 rep max testing, right? All those, and you're not doing 10 sets of 10 all of those. But it needs to be some sort of variable that you're throwing into your training for you to get the benefits of deadlifting. If you only did conventional deadlifting, you'll make a bias in your hips and your lower back that's going to cause you like a problem later on down your life, right?
And this is also why coaching is so important, because a coach can kind of balance you out and make sure that you're having a good blend of everything.
Well, I would say coaching is important for 2 things, more than that. Number one, if you just Google weightlifting, you're going to get a million results with a million different things. So so what do I, if you just Google it, I did it last night just to see what would pop up. Right. And like literally I got 10,000 hits and I'm like, what am I supposed to do? Like if I was a beginner, right, it would be really hard to figure that out.
Yeah.
Right. So right away, it's hard to find what I should pick. Right. Number two, your body doesn't move like what you see on Instagram. I'm really sorry to point this out to everybody, but we don't have the same mobility as some of the people that we're watching that are professional athletes or are, influencers on Instagram, okay, or TikTok or whatever you're watching, right? So you need to find someone who can show you what your range of motion really needs to be or your mobility side of things, because if you try to overextend in a certain area, you'll just get hurt. And if you get hurt, what do you blame right away? Oh, I shouldn't have been weightlifting, right?
Yeah. Heard that one all the time.
Yeah, I hurt my back deadlifting. I'll never deadlift again. Oh, then you're gonna die young, right? Like because then you're gonna have a weak back, you're gonna have weak hips, and from there you're gonna have really bad problems later on in your life. So it's like that's what a coach will do for you: sort those things out. Because I thought I could figure weightlifting out myself until
me too.
until I met a coach who walked me through it. And I'm glad he did, because I had a really good understanding of what to do and what to work on as I got older, right? And now that I've been having time doing it, it's like the first thing I look at is the way your body moves and it like telling you how these things are going to work for your body.
Yeah, absolutely. And, a huge reason why I got into CrossFit in the first place, because I got so bored with bodybuilding. Because that's why I thought everyone, like, that's the only thing was the option at the time. I was like, you bodybuilded, and then I would throw in some squats, deadlift, and bench, of course. Yeah. But in terms of, I would spend 2 hours in there because it would take forever too. Yeah. Bodybuilding takes a long time because since it is an isolation exercise.
Yeah, you're doing isolation.
You have to do a lot more of it, and you have to rotate stations and everything. So that took a while. But the good thing was that it built a foundation for my CrossFit, because I had some strength moving into CrossFit. So I had somewhat of a base.
But you should have all of that mixed in, right? You know what I mean? Like, to help break up monotony and break up training, it's good to have variable aspects brought into it. Even people who, even Olympic lifters who spend, 5 days a week doing Olympic lift training, their accessory work is the front squat, the deadlift, the bench press. They throw all that in there so they don't lose that ability to have it, or bicep curls or whatever it may be, right? If you're a gymnast training gymnastics, what do they make you? They're going to do a lot of bicep curls, shoulder press. They're going to do all these accessory weight movements to help get your joints and ligaments stronger, so that they can handle the abuse that's going. So you need something in the middle that can give you both, right? And that's why CrossFit is so great for those things. Yeah,
that's a great point, because your body can only take so much time. It can only handle so much Olympic weightlifting or powerlifting, to where the CNS will start getting fatigued. Yeah. And the good thing about bodybuilding is it fills in those gaps because it's more muscular and less CNS. Yeah. So it still allows you to train with more volume without burning out.
Yeah. You just burn out the muscles. So the next day you can barely walk.
Yeah. Yeah. And in terms of the importance in functional fitness, especially in CrossFit, this gives you a full balance of a base, really.
Yeah. Well, it gives you an actual baseline, right? If you're just coming in cold from the floor from the ground, and I just got off the couch today, I'm going to walk in, right? It's hard to walk in and be like, all right, do snatches. You're like, what is that? Right. And and you try to learn, it's like, okay, you probably need to go through the basics first of pulling. So let's do some deadlifting first, so we learn how to pull. And then from there, we can actually get to more of explosive movements. So there should be a progression movement throughout, right? Mm-hmm. If you have trouble pulling from the floor because of mobility or range of motion, then you should go to more of a bodybuilding, isometric style, and be like, okay, we'll do more of an RDL or more of these things, or even single leg modalities to help strengthen those pieces. So it should be it's always different based on training to get that baseline up there. Yeah. But you should always be working through different, if we only snatched and cleaned every week, we actually would be, we wouldn't be that strong. Mm-hmm. We'd move weight really well, but our deadlift would go down. Our ability to do deadlift volume at certain weights would go down too. So are we really getting fitter? Yeah. Right? The answer is no. If we only did deadlift and no Olympic lifts, or squats and no Olympic lifts, right, our speed would go down. So again, the goal is to be fitter and healthier through longevity. So how do we get you there? It's incorporating multiple aspects of lifting inside and resistance training inside your week of training, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on to our second segment, which is the myths and benefits of weightlifting. So Some benefits are obviously you're going to get muscle growth. That's the whole point of why we lift in the first place. There's metabolic benefits because it's more metabolic than doing like just straight cardio. And also your mental health benefits because of the coordination aspect. Do you want to say anything about the benefits? I mean, that was my summary.
Those are great benefits. Yeah, no, the benefits are exponential, right? Like you should be like, let's just break it down for you. Like, I mean, think about your health, right? A lot of times people have, as men and women get older, we lose our testosterone or we lose our estrogen, right? So how can we get that up naturally? Well, we do that by lifting weights because that primal urge of lifting heavy stuff off the ground or holding heavy loads, right, will help to increase those aspects of your health.
Yeah, the body's forced to adapt to produce more testosterone. Yes.
Think about your muscle mass growth, right? We were just talking about type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, right? Mm-hmm. You lose what you don't. I mean, you don't lose what you have. It starts to shrink and go away, right? You can bring it. What you want is a combination of all of them in your system, right? So lifting weights or resistance training keeps those things healthier, right? Keeps my tendons strong, keeps me resistant, like keeps me like fall hazards. How many people I used to work with, 70 plus clients for a long time when I first got to California, and their biggest fear was falls. And it's like, how do we get them stronger? And we literally would do resistance and weight training, right, with the cables or with weights, and it was amazing. They loved it, and the results they had was like exponential. So that's what you want to keep going up because you're, the whole Greg Glassman thing was like, you want to be hard to kill. Right? Yep. Like the stronger I am, the faster I am, the harder I am to kill.
Yep. Strong people are harder to kill.
Yeah. So it's like, we got to get you in that realm right there. So those are great benefits. Plus it makes you look good. Like it makes you feel good.
I mean, who doesn't want to look good, right? I mean, I think most of us get into working out to look good. Yeah. But then we realize, hey, there's so many more other benefits to this than just looking good.
If you're a guy, like, man, who doesn't want broad shoulders and a nice chest, right? Like, and nice arms. Like, it makes the shirt look really well, like on everything.
Yeah, it boosts confidence. It just makes you more resilient.
Yeah. And then mental health, right? Like, we all have struggles where we get pissed. Like we need to exert that out, and not everyone can scream, not everyone can fight or things like that, right? Just because, come on, we're living in suburbia here. But like lifting heavy weights, like getting out there and like, slamming some weights, even if it's not like, like, hey, it's 55 pounds. Like that's not heavy. It's like, that's heavy for you, right? That's enough for you to get it out, right?
Yep.
You'll feel so much better. Like the endorphins will rush to you and you'll have a better time. So the benefits are they're endless in terms of like that.
Yeah. That's awesome. No, I couldn't have said it better myself. Let's move on to 2 myths that I want you to bust. So I have 2 for you. We have lifting makes you bulky, and number 2, it's bad for your joints. So let's talk about the bulky part first.
Yeah. The dumbest thing I hear all the time is when females come in and they go, I don't want to lift because I don't want to look like a man. All right, cool. You're not.
You don't produce enough testosterone. And you don't lift heavy enough or frequently enough to get that much bulk.
Yeah. When you hear that, I'm like, all right, well, stop. Change your Instagram channel because you're looking at all the wrong people, because the average person, it's not going to work that way for you.
Yeah. I can't tell you many times I've heard that too. And people will like compare themselves to a bodybuilder. I'm like, are you lifting 4 hours a day and taking anabolic steroids and eating 500 grams of protein?
Yeah. Let's just start right there. Like you're probably only working out 3 or 4 times a week with an hour, maybe then you're not doing an hour of just weight training first off. So right away, like you're not gonna get there, right? There's that calorie count, right? You're probably not eating twice your calories.
Oh yeah,
your BMI calories. You think about
great point. You need to be at a calorie surplus,
right? You have to be at a surplus to gain super big muscles, right? And like these powerlifters that you see or these bodybuilders that you see, they're eating probably twice their calorie intake when they're bulking into it, right? So you're probably not doing that on a consistent basis, A, because of guilt, and B, because you just physically can't because you're not burning enough calories.
It's hard to eat. It's hard to eat that much.
Right. It's really tough. So there's 2. And then 3, you're probably not taking the drugs they're taking. Like to get to a certain point after I'm sorry to break this to you guys, at a certain age, you're just not going to grow muscle the way you see it on TV. Like, it's just not going to work.
That's a great point because everyone listening, you can only get so big naturally. And then once you hit that natural peak, that's when you start adding in anabolic steroids.
Yeah. And I was like, in the second you think you can get bigger, you just get fat. Yeah. Like, take it from me. Like, I got pretty heavy during COVID. Like, I got up to like 275 personally, like to myself. And I was probably the strongest I've ever been in a really long time.
Yeah.
But at some point, my body was like, yeah, we're done producing muscle, bro. It's fat here at this point. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I'm a hard gainer, so I start at 150, and believe me, I spent years trying to get huge.
Yeah.
And it is very, very difficult. So if you think you're going to look like a bodybuilder by doing CrossFit 3 times a week and lifting some weights in class, please tell me what you're doing, because I want to look like that if I could do work out 3 times a week.
It just takes time. Like, I mean, you will look good in yourself, but it's not going to make you look super bulky and change. It would take 12 months of really solid work, really like working hard for you to see like a really major change in your system, right? Yeah. Like I'm talking like, oh, I look like this, and then next year I look like something completely different. It would take like a year of like real solid work.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't happen overnight, unfortunately. Okay. So boom, busted that one. Like, you can't worry about that.
All right.
What was the second one you had?
Let's move on to it's bad for your joints.
It's actually the opposite, right?
Yes.
You know what's bad for your joints? Doing it wrong. Mm-hmm. You know what's bad for your joints? Not doing anything.
Yes.
Like, we know right away that lifting weights or doing resistance training, however you want to phrase it, is what strengthens and conditions the joints, the ligaments, and the bones, right? It's how you prevent from, like, that's the reason we have kids do, that's why the reason like high school kids do weightlifting, right? For sports. That's the reason that like it's a focus for everyone. Not that it's not that it's bad for you. It's just, it helps strengthen. Now, too much of anything is a bad thing.
Yeah.
If I gave you, 100 ounces of water right now and said, chug it, water is good for you, right? Well, too much of water can kill you.
Yes.
We know this.
Absolutely can.
It's the same thing with weightlifting. It's just that weightlifting's so vilified because for so long we've had like piss poor like coaches out there.
Yes.
Having
or
people,
no coaches, or people trying to do it on their own.
Yeah. Or no coaches going out there and be like, I know how to do this. I saw it on TV. Cool. And then they get hurt and they're like, I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard, I'll never deadlift again because I hurt my back one time. Okay.
You were probably deadlifting wrong.
Well, it's been 5 years. I think your body's healed. Like, we can move on right to the top. Yeah. And so it's like, you need good coaching. You need good perspective. So no, it's not bad for your joints or ligaments, right? It's like one of the most healthy things we can do. As people get older, right? 65 plus, it's actually highly recommended. They have to beg you to go and work out. The doctors go, please do weight training.
Yeah.
Like, please do 5-pound curls, hold a 5-pound weight.
Yep.
And it's like, you have to beg them because it's so much healthier for the joints and systems. If you start younger, right, and you progress, then you're going to be so much more healthier as you get older, like as you age right there. It's all been proven already. So that myth that it's been bad for you is just someone feeding you lies inside that.
Yeah, there's really nothing to back up that it's bad for your joints other than you're just doing it incorrectly.
Yeah. Yeah, incorrect. Anything incorrect is bad for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Drive
a car.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say that. You drive a car incorrectly, guess what? Bad things are going to happen. Okay. All right, moving on. So we're going to move on to the differences between mechanics, form, and technique, because I think a lot of people get this wrong this is actually perfect timing because we're moving into the section of where, we want you to do it safely and effectively. So first off, I'm just going to run through the definition of each. So first off, mechanics is essentially the science of how parts of your body work together during movement. So an example of this would back to the car example, is that think of mechanics like the engine in a car, and it's what makes things move the way they do. So in a squat, mechanics explain why your hips and knees bend a certain way. And then on technique, we're talking about how you apply the science of the mechanics that you're doing to actually do a movement. So technique is like driving a car. So you use the engine, which is in this case the mechanics, to navigate the turns and control speed. So in weightlifting, technique is how you lift the barbell off the ground, like if you're doing a deadlift. And so keeping it close to your body, for example, is an example of technique. And then finally, form is what your movement looks like in action. So it shows if your technique is good or bad. And an easy example of this would be form is like how smooth and safely you drive your car. So in the gym, good form means that your deadlift, we have a neutral spine, engaged core, and you're not jerking the bar off the ground. Danny, anything you want to expand on those 3 topics?
No, I just make it easier, right? Your range of motion is just the way the movement should go. Right? If it's a deadlift, it should be a hinge, not a squat, right? Mm-hmm. That's how simple it should be, right? I know that sounds really like dumb in people's heads, but I'm like, that's how simple range of motion is, right? Some people don't have range of motion. That's why it's the first thing you look at, right? Checklist right there, boom. Technique is the style. Now technique is like getting into like you were just saying, like how close is the bar versus how wide is the bar, right? Where's our grip? Where's our foot stance? Where's our knee bend? That's technique right there, right? And then form is like what muscles are engaging as we lift that group, right? So, you know, you gotta start with the base point. It was like, can you even move in the right pattern, right? Do we understand what the pattern is? B, do we understand what object we're holding and how it should be held? And C, what muscles should I be feeling this in or engaging or focusing on as I move this like weight throughout, right?
Yeah.
So just break it down simply in your head. Like it's more complex, the definitions as you Google them, but in your mind, that's the first thing you go for, right? The last thing you should be asking yourself is, what muscles do I feel? Like you don't work in reverse. Okay, I'm working this muscle. I should feel this. I should hold like, you start with the range of motion technique, and then you go to form, right? As we work through the process.
Absolutely. And last question before we wrap things up. So what role does coaching or having an experienced eye play in mastering all three of these aspects?
It's the only way to do it. So if you want, like, dude, coaching is the only way you're going to get better at doing these things, right? You can go and deadlift in front of a mirror all day long, but if you don't know what to look at, right? If you're deadlifting in front of a mirror and you're seeing yourself, you're already doing something wrong. I'll start there. So there's one thing, come find me and I'll fix that problem. Two, like how are you supposed to improve what muscle groups or find the problem if you can't see the problem, right? A coach's eye is not a joke, or it's not something we say to like pitch to you guys. It's something we perfect. We spend years working on to look at specific problems in your body, right? I can watch you do a series of setups or series of moves, and I can tell you what's wrong with your body instantly. And the reason being is because I've seen thousands upon thousands of hours of this.
Exactly.
I spent my downtime
and you do
watching
it full
this.
time. Yeah, you do it full time.
Right. And like I've been there myself, and I like coaches put themselves in these places to find it. So if you're wondering what your problem is, A, I'm not getting stronger. B, I'm having pain. C, I don't understand. Then you need a one-on-one person to look at you and like give you an assessment of what's happening to explain those pieces to you.
Exactly. That feedback loop is going to be so much faster than trying to figure out on your own. And you're
just going to pick it up. Like it's like, it's like, dude, do you remember learning how to drive a car? Like it was like the most nerve-wracking thing someone's ever done, right? Yeah. Like it's easy now. Like we all drive one hand. On their first time we get in, they're like, "Oh my god, there's two pedals. Oh my god, do I do 2 feet? Do I do 1 foot? How do like that's what lifting is like. It's like when you first start. If you've never like experienced, you're like, I think I know how to do this because I've driven like a game, right?
Yep.
And then so you get on there, you're like, oh, I got to look out the window.
This is a lot different.
Yeah, it's really tough. So like it's the same kind of concept when you go into it there.
Yeah, it'll save you time. It'll save you frustration, and it'll also save you from any kind of injury. All right. Any final thoughts before I wrap things up, Danny?
No.
All
I got
right.
nothing.
Fantastic. Great podcast. I love that one. That was a good one. I was looking forward to this one.
Yeah, me too.
All righty, everybody. Well, thank you so much. Just a quick summary. We covered the basics of weightlifting, the differences between Olympic, power, and bodybuilding. Remember, you want to be doing a combination of all three. And if you don't know where to start, please talk to one of us. We'd love to chat with you on how to get you going on weightlifting. We also busted some myths and went over the benefits. So the benefits of weightlifting is that you're going to get better muscle growth. There's metabolic benefits, meaning that you'll use food as fuel. Go back to episode 41 and listen to our nutrition podcast, and also the mental health aspect. Weightlifting does not make you bulky. It is not bad for your joints. And finally, we discussed the differences between mechanics, form, and technique. And I hope that was helpful and informative because we get asked that question a lot. Thank you so much, Danny. This was fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for listening. If this was helpful, please leave us a 5-star review so we know to make more content just like this. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Red Wolf CrossFit and DM your questions or content suggestions there. We'd love to hear from you. Until next time, good luck. Have fun.
Nailed it.